Hello, and welcome to One Idea Away. I'm Hayden. Today, I'm joined by Cherizza Lundy. Cherizza has spent her entire career at the intersection of people, strategy, and hard decision-making in business. And she's worked in some really interesting companies as well. She's worked in Intel, Google, Stitch Fix. And within those companies, she's been a chief of staff over 8 times, has worked in crisis management, and has worked in a big turnaround at Stitch Fix, and has worked very closely with senior leaders in those companies. Recently, she's moved to being sort of the chief of staff and building up the entire front office for a new professional women's volleyball team in San Francisco called the San Francisco Signal. I think from this episode, you'll get some great insights on what it means to build a culture from the ground up, how to work with senior leaders, and what it really means to know who you are as a company. Thanks for coming to One Idea Away, and thank you, Cherizza, for having this interview. To start this off, I like to start every episode with a little before the resume. So before we get into all the different companies and roles you've had throughout your career, what were you like when you were younger?
I was kind of the same. I was a big extrovert. I was friends with everybody. I like to talk to other kids as much as I like to talk to adults. I would say also risk taker, informed risk, but risk taker nonetheless. And then I would say I got myself into trouble sometimes, but problem solve to get out of it. So
Sure.
always just living life. Yeah.
Were you more of a competitive kid or a collaborative kid?
I was a very competitive kid. I am still a very competitive adult. I have learned to become competitive with myself. But no, I have always said, I hate to lose more than I love to win. So yes, I have always had a competitive drive.
Mm-hmm. So you were also, I've read up on you a bit, where you were an athlete while you were growing up. What do you think sports taught you before you had experience with leadership?
Yeah,
that sort of has influenced your business performance and life today.
I would say I credit sports actually with probably all of my accomplishments. And the reason why is I played a lot of team sports. So I played soccer and basketball. And then I did play tennis, which is not a team sport, but there's a little bit there around learning how to manage your emotions. But I think team sports for me taught me, one, you learn how to take feedback really, really quickly. And you need to take the feedback, apply the feedback. The next thing is you learn to not dwell on things too much, because there's always a next play or next thing you need to do. So what did you learn? How do you apply it? Move forward. And then you learn a lot about accountability. I think that was probably one of the biggest lessons, which is how to hold other people accountable for what they need to do. But then also, how do you hold yourself accountable for the things you need to do? If you don't do the thing you're supposed to do, the team actually can't function well.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned all of those things through sports, and I think that's why in the workplace, performance reviews for me were great. One-on-ones with my boss were great, because I'm what's going well, what I need to do better, here's what I think I need to do. So yeah, I credit playing sports with so much of my success.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've gotten a lot of that too through my experience with team sports.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that your career has sort of moved through a lot of different industries and positions within companies.
Sure.
Was that kind of movement random, or was there a clear through line through that of meaning for you?
Sure. Yeah, for me it was I would say random but also clear. So the thing that probably feels random to people is the industries. It's you went from tech, and I would say old tech hardware at Intel, to a couple nonprofits at Lean In, and then Code 2040, and then I went to Google, then I went to Stitch Fix, which is basically retail, and then I built my own company, and now I'm in sports. So for all of those, I would say yeah, if you look at it at face value, it's pretty random. But the way I always chose it was thinking about what skill I needed to learn and wanted to learn in order to get to the next level of something I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to try to found a company. I always knew I wanted to be in a leadership position, and all those companies just offered me the opportunity to learn a skill to round me out. And yeah, hopping industries is interesting. It's fun. I've never been one where I want to learn all the things about one thing. I like learning a little bit about everything, and being able to apply that to any scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely see that in all the different industries you've been in. In those industries, in moving through all those places, are you more drawn towards following cool people you're interested in, or certain organizations you're interested in, or problems, or what's sort of your pull factor?
My pull factor is usually like the problem that we're trying to solve. So whether that is, hey, like right now, like starting a brand new professional sports team from scratch, like how do you build brand awareness? How do you get fans? How do you build a championship organization? To like at Intel, one of the roles I had there, it was basically being the deputy, I would say the little chief of staff to like a brand new HR organization with like a brand new CEO of a global company that everyone knew had like just missed the iPhone. So it's like, how do you rally like 100,000 people to then like lean in where it's like, how do you get more women in the workplace and make sure companies are doing so like it was always the problem, I think, that drew me to it. And then I always like to work with really great people. So these leaders who I feel like I can learn from, but then also leaders who are willing to learn and then willing to, take feedback and be adaptable. So those were kind of the things I was always looking for in my career. And, I think I've picked like pretty well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, really interesting topics, I think personally. You mentioned being a chief of staff. I noticed that you've been a chief of staff like multiple times in your career. Why do you think you've been sort of drawn towards that role or been?
Yeah. It's a great question. And it's interesting to talk about now because the chief of staff role now is like blowing up. Like everybody wants to hire one. There's no consistent definition of one. All founders are like, I need this person to be an extension, yada, yada, yada. My first chief of staff role was like, I don't know, almost like 12 years ago, like a long time ago. Because I was like like I said, I was what I call the little chief of staff at Intel. And back then at Intel, they were all called technical assistants, and those people had been the technical assistant, and then they became the CEO. So it was like this training ground for leadership. I think what's happened to me recently is these roles have just kind of found me because I've done it before, but I'm never actually seeking them out.
Okay.
I'm actually always taking them and expanding them to something much larger. But I think the reason why they find me and I get attracted to them is like, they're usually pretty ambiguous. There's like an overarching problem that the organization is trying to solve. And it's like this role is a critical way to solve that. And so for me, it's like, hey, is this role interesting enough? Is there not actually a definition around it where I can make it my own? And then do I feel like the person I'm being the chief of staff for understands I'm not just chief of staff to them, but also the chief of staff to the organization. So that's also been really important to me. And the chief of staff role, you just get to like do a bunch of things, but you have to actually talk to and build relationships with a lot of people, which is, I mean, I'm an extrovert. I love doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think that's why these roles have found me. And then I've always taken them and made them something bigger. So now I hold the title of chief of staff and VP of strategy. So I have like P&L experience too.
Yeah, of course. I really want to get in deep in sort of like the chief of staff and VP of strategy thing, because I mean you've been a chief of staff like many times across
like almost
tech, 10 nonprofits, retail, sports, a bunch of different fields too. Like not even just like the amount of times you've done it, but also like in the range of places you've done it. What does across all of that, I guess, what does a chief of staff like really do?
Yeah, I'd say the chief of staff is really like the connective tissue of the organization. So what I mean by that is it is being able to, one, manage like the rhythm of the business. So like, what are we trying to achieve? How are we measuring our achievement to that? And then like, where might it be broken or where is it working? And then how do you apply where it's working to other areas? So like, there's like this operating rhythm. The second thing you really need to do is like, you need to understand all the people dynamics, because at the end of the day, businesses are just like trying to get a bunch of people towards a shared goal. And so what you need to understand is like, hey, this person is trying to drive this objective. I know this other person is trying to drive this other objective. There's likely conflict between those two things. They might not know there's conflict. I can see it. And how do I get ahead of that, get them together, get them in the room to have the right conversation? Or there's like an objective we need to go out and execute on, no one's owning it. As a chief of staff, you can get in, own it. You can either drive it to execution or you can get it together, and then I'd say hand it off. And then the other thing is like, you need to be the thought partner to the principal. And a thought partner does not mean being a yes person. And I think this is where chiefs of staff really get it wrong. And I think if you watch any political drama, sometimes that chief of staff's a yes person. For me, My job is to actually round out like that principal's kind of skill sets. They can't be all the things. They shouldn't be all the things. There are things they need to be doing, and there are things they should not be doing. So how can I pick up some of those things, but then be a mirror back to them when it's a decision that they're weighing or inputs I'm hearing from the organization where I can tell the organization is not aligned with the principal, and I'm giving that feedback. So it's like, you're giving feedback. You're not just saying yes. You're kind of saying, I don't think we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, this is what's going to happen, and here's how we can make it better. So, you're the connective tissue, and you're the engine behind a lot of these things getting done for everybody.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I mean, I like that. How is being like this new role of being a chief of staff in sports? How is that different from being a chief of staff in like the other more business oriented roles you've had?
Yeah, I think for me, and it's been a couple months, but I think usually in the other roles I've had is like the functions are like pretty distinct and they're constantly running. Like it's almost like every single day, if you have a product like a software, every single day you're trying to sell the software, you're trying to improve it, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
In sports, like you're either in season or out of season. So those are like, it's like you are running to this big moment where like the season starts, but then you have to like make sure the season is successful, both from a fan engagement and attendance, that the product on the field or court is doing really well. And then all of that informs what you're doing in the off season, where you're figuring out who your partners are, where you're figuring out like what you want to do for next year. You're trying to understand more fan data. Like, it's just like, it's like it's pretty clear what's on off, but then it always feels like it's on, but on for like a different objective. And that feels just like way different. Like everything anchors towards like almost like the launch every single season and how to make the launch bigger, better, etc. Where like, in corporations, like you're changing your strategy because you're like, I have a different product. Like we're always going to be a volleyball team. We're always going to have a volleyball team. So I'm not going from like, we're having an AI product this year to like, a new version of that AI product or a new software. Like that's what has made it totally different for sure.
Yeah, I think that's also a really good segue in talking about like on season, off season, the different things you have to be focused on towards the VP of strategy role that you're sort of taking on now. I want to sort of get specific because when you hear like strategy in general, it's kind of hard to understand like what that means.
Yeah.
What does a strategist like specifically do?
Oh, Hayden, you can talk to a billion people and they'll give different answers. Okay, so for me, when I think about a strategist is there's kind of two parts. One, it is identifying long-term, like what your overarching goal is. And that can kind of be like a narrative, but it's like, where are we going? Right? And then you have to say, okay, what do we think we need to accomplish to get to that thing?
Okay.
And then you have to make data-informed trade-offs around what thing you're going to place your bets on. So you'll hear this a lot with a lot of strategy people where they're like, our long-term strategy is this, and we're going to make like these bets. And what it means by bet is like, you have basically done the due diligence to the research you can with the data you have, and then you're trying to compare apples to apples around things like you can do. So if I use like a tech company example, it's like, okay, what should we do? Should we release this new version of like our phone, or should we actually go and create a new layer of software that can be embedded in the phone, or should we actually go partner with someone to just make the chip? Like those are the bets you're going to take to get to like, if you're like, my number one thing is to be like the number one small device company in the world. Like you're going to be like, which of those do I do? So a strategist is kind of in charge of like helping build that out for like the visionary kind of leader who has set that overarching goal. And then you kind of work backwards, and sometimes it's getting into operations, but then you're like, what is our 1 year like strategic operating plan to set us up to have those successful bets? And then how are we measuring how we're doing and what pivots we need to make? So it is a lot of, honestly, it's like a lot of numbers, which I don't think people think.
Yeah.
It is a lot of having confidence in, with very little information, but always trying to get more information to make the best decision you can. And you have to bring all these people on board with that overarching strategy too.
Right. So
in the vacuum. Yeah.
I think that last part you were talking about, in that you have to bring the people aboard is kind of combining the chief of staff and the strategist sort of parts of you. How do you think, or like, I guess, why do you think you've been successful at combining those two roles of chief of staff and VP of strategy?
I think because I'm like genuinely interested in people.
Mhm.
Like, I genuinely feel like I value everyone the same way in a workplace. Like, I'm like the CEO to me is just as important as like the analyst who is like taking calls every day. And I had this experience when I worked at Intel where um we were in this organization, Global Employee Support, and we had this point of view around like how to make sure employees can get their tickets answered really quickly. And we thought if we had a ticket system, you submit a ticket, you get a response in 24 hours, it's just done, etc. Then you go and talk to like the agents who are having to get the inputs from the employees, and they're like, half the time they don't have all the information they need. We have to go back and forth over days. And so something that like the leadership thought was like a 2-day thing was actually like a week and a half thing.
Right.
And I only figured that out from going and talking to the agents. And then I also went and just called up some employees who like hadn't had their ticket answered to be like, what's going on? And I think that has made it really, that's what's differentiated me is like I'm generally having conversations with people to understand what situation they're in, what might be frustrating, what might be working. And all of that is like, they're not just emotions, feelings, it's information around how to make something better.
Okay.
And I'm able to then be like, you know, if we're going to go on a strategy, like we're going to pick this like objective, I'm like, this person is probably really not going to agree with it. And they've been fighting us the whole way. So like, how do we get them on board? Like, what is the thing? And then I can say, oh yeah, that's right. They have seen this strategy attempted before and it didn't work. Let's go ask them why they think it didn't work so we can improve that this next time. So that's like, I think that's what's made me really good at it. Is yeah, like genuinely caring about people and genuinely being interested in their opinions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to like the culture aspect. I saw sort of in your career, in your business right now, from the start of a women's volleyball team, you're sort of in the position of watching one of these like company, I guess, in a way, cultures form. I mean, it's a team, but it's also a business.
It's a business. Yeah, it's a company.
Right. And you're also like within like the position of being able to sort of shape that culture yourself. Yeah. Being in that position, what have you learned about where culture really comes from?
The culture comes from like the behaviors and the like. It's almost like the behaviors, the rhythms, the rituals that like you accept. Mm-hmm. So culture for me, you can't just like slap culture on a piece of paper and be like, this is our culture. Yeah. Like if people don't understand it and don't embody it and act it, then like you actually don't have like culture. Like I don't actually know what you have. I mean, actually you probably have a culture, it's just not the culture like you define. Right. So I think, you know, like one of the things we really care about in our culture is making sure we are example for young girls who want to go on any kind of like ambitious path, right? And so what that looks like is it looks like us doing a lot of community engagement. It looks like us even sitting at the table as a senior team and being like, actually, I heard this when I was out walking from like a younger girl, or I heard this from one of our interns. It is like bringing those voices to the table so we can be inclusive and centering like who we're really going after. The other thing is like, and I learned this, a lot of this goes back to Intel because it's basically where I grew up. Right. But, you know, one of their cultural tenets, I just will always remember this was like assumed responsibility. And like, seems pretty like clear. It's like, yeah, I'm responsible for this. But how many times have you been in a situation where like, you know, someone did something, they're not going to say anything. But like, you then are there, you're like, okay, if the culture, if one of the values is assuming responsibility, like I have to like name it. And so the example they use that it always stuck with me at orientation was like, if you see like a little bit of trash on the floor, and they also had a culture of safety. If you see that piece of trash, someone could slip on it, which impacts safety. So like you have to pick it up, you have to assume responsibility since you found it and throw it out. And like that is how you like, I think ingrain culture is like, what are your values, making sure people act on them. And then I think it's just like, yeah, when like you reward people too, you recognize them when they're living out the values and the culture you're trying to set. So yeah, so that's kind of what we're already doing. And like the culture was one of the reasons why I like joined. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? You're like, Cherizza, you're like the second person. How did you already have a culture? But yeah, we already had a culture because of the way the founders had launched the team and the way they went and got owners that were aligned to the vision. And then the way our president also started to build out the team. So it was like even who you pick helps build your culture.
Right. Okay. How, like, so say you're in, like, I guess it works for this situation too. So just think about it. What if someone who like performs very well for your team, like they're a great analyst or whatever, but they don't fit the culture that you're trying to build for your company?
Yeah. What do you do?
Yeah. What's sort of the situation there?
Oh man, these are the toughest situations. And I think for me, this is one. I think if you're going to have a performance system, I think you need to have like how you go about things as like one of the things you're rewarding or not. Like, I think so much will reward like your accomplishment, but I actually think it matters how you do it. And I think how needs to be anchored to your culture and your values. In organizations I have been at, I have been hypercritical when we have like a brilliant person who does not embody the values, especially because I think so much of the values and the culture needs to be about how you treat other people.
Right.
And so for me, my bar is like pretty low on that. Like, I wouldn't say I'm like, oh, we got to get this person out, but I'm like, this person needs to have a lot of coaching around this and give them plenty of opportunities. And at some point you have to have like a real conversation where it's just like, hey, are you bought into like what we're doing and the way we're doing it? And sometimes people will come to their own conclusion, like, yeah, this is like not really working for me. Other times they're just like totally blind to it and you have to like really hold them accountable. So like, thankfully, everyone we have on our team right now, we don't have any of these issues. But if I were in any other situation, I very candidly too would be asking myself, like, can I be in a culture that will say its culture is one thing and then tolerate something different?
Right.
And then I've done this before. I've been like, I don't think this is like the right team for me, or this is the right organization for me, and then I like exit stage left. But I do think those are like really tricky situations. Like me personally, I don't really stand for it. But as leaders, I think it's on us. So like when you see it happening, like you have to do as much like correction you can. And it's also good if like, then there's like a little slippery slope around like, if you're hiring someone, you also don't just want a bunch of people who are like the same, right?
Yeah.
Like the culture adders who can like expand on your culture. But some of your values are just like treating people with respect is like a non-negotiable.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you mentioned it before, I think multiple times in this conversation about culture, about companies putting like their culture on a piece of paper or like specifically saying like, this is who we are as our values. How do you look like as a chief of staff, or I mean, just being in a company in general, how do you know when you're like describing the organization, like the culture that you really have versus the organization like with the culture that you want it to have, like if that makes sense? Like when you're putting out there like we want to be a culture or we want to be a company that sets an example for young women, how do you know that that's like what you are versus what you want it to be?
I mean, the second young women stop wanting to follow us or be part of our brand, I'm gonna be like, oh man, what are we doing?
Right.
Like I also see this as if you say you're a culture who wants like open disagreement and discussion to be
sure.
Great. So say you want that. The number one way I can tell whether or not we have that or not is how our meetings are run. So if in our meetings only like two people are talking, it's usually like the executive and like one other person. And even if I'm trying to get other people to say something, if nothing is being said, like we don't have that culture. Like something is broken.
Right.
So then from there you have like, now I got to go do the like, excavation about like what is broken. And sometimes that's like, hey, before when we said we want discussion and debate, like we would have discussion and debate and then it would be completely shut down.
Right.
Or sometimes people are like, yeah, we discussed and debated and then we didn't go in the direction I wanted. So like we don't really have a culture of discussion and debate. And that's where I'm kind of like, well, but we did discuss and debate, but a different decision would be made. And like,
yeah, 100%.
Still embodied like that culture, like you just didn't like the outcome, which like I never like all the outcomes either. And so I think for me, it's usually like the behavior, again, it's like the behaviors I see, like whether or not they're happening. Like the other thing I think about, like one of our big values is, just being like almost like doing everything with like excellence as much as we can and like a learning mindset. And so like if you're gonna do things with excellence and learning mindset, like you have to give people the opportunity to like fail, mess up, and then coach them. And like we do that. Like if it's like a you messed up on something, one, no one tells you messed up, or like they tell you messed up and they don't give you another opportunity, like then you're not actually living your culture and that value you set. And so I think that's where it kind of really comes from. And it's really hard because sometimes this is where chief staff, I think, plays a unique role because sometimes leaders will be like, this is the culture, and like the chief of staff is a leader too. I should like put myself in there. And
Right. Yeah.
like, this is our culture. Like, why aren't people doing it? It's like, well, how are your behaviors showing up? How are my behaviors showing up? And like, are we actually even allowing this culture that we want to flourish or not? So yeah.
Right. I mean, I've talked about it on my podcast before that like your values only really mean something when you're willing to sacrifice something for them.
Totally.
So that speaks to that 100%.
1000%. I think that is, and I think that's true, like not just in the workplace, but like obviously in life too.
Right.
So like when it gets really hard, like what are the things you're going to fall back on that help you, make whatever decision? Yeah, and that sometimes like really your values will get challenged, and that's how you know if they're really a value or not.
Right, 100%. On your website, you've said it before that bad systems can stifle great talent. How do you know if someone's like actually just performing bad versus like when the system is making it hard for them to perform how they can?
I generally have a theory that like no one comes to work and like wants to suck at their job. So like I start with that.
Right.
With like, I don't think anyone really wants to suck their job. And so then I have to say like, hey, like what is going on? And the usually way like as a manager and a leader, that's usually like really intimidating, especially as you're more senior. You're like, what's going on? The person's like, I don't know. So I will usually say, hey, I've noticed like this thing is happening. Is there something in the process, like, or a piece of information you're not getting in time? Like, what is like the blocker? And then how can we potentially fix that?
Right.
And if you're like, oh, there's no blocker, then I'm like, all right, like then is there a way I can help you? Like noodle on it, let me know if there's like a way I can help you. Or like, okay, try to run it the way you think best. And if that doesn't work, like let's talk about it. So I give people like the opportunity first to like identify like what might be getting in the way. And usually it is like something like in the process, or sometimes it's like they're just overwhelmed, they have too much on their plate and they just didn't even know there was the opportunity for them to say this is too much on my plate. And usually if there's too much on someone's plate, there's like an overarching system of like how work is getting allocated, how work is getting prioritized. Like you can start to solve that. So all of these things are like frankly systems within systems.
Right.
So that's usually how I get to it. And then sometimes it's like people are just like in the wrong role. And then those are really, really hard conversations. But I think if you approach it with empathy and like the way I've always approached it, like, I don't think this person wants to suck at their job.
Mm-hmm.
It must really be tough to come into work every day and try to do this thing that's so frustrating. Like think about when you're trying to learn something and it's like so frustrating, and then add on top that you have a deadline and like this person asking for like it's just gonna get worse, right?
100%.
And so then you can get into a conversation where it's like, hey, this seems like not the right thing for you to be doing right now. So like, let's move you off of that. Let's give it to someone who's like, this is their skill set. And then like, you're probably though going to need how to do this eventually. So like, let's figure out what the right support training is, etc. So that's usually how, yeah, like sometimes it's like the system doesn't work, sometimes a mismatch of skill set. That's generally how I try to approach things. I can say for certain I've never, and it's probably because, I don't know, maybe I just have, rose-colored glasses, but I really don't think I've ever worked someone like this person is like literally awful. Like I'm usually like,
right, I got you.
There's something that is like in the way. And so like, how do I like remove that blocker? So yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned there that sometimes the big solution to the problem is like redesigning the system to some extent to like, give someone information earlier or to like help them perform better, whatever it might be. Is it always really worth it to fully like redesign the system like that for somebody?
No, it's not always worth it. I mean, it depends on like how big the thing is. And then also sometimes, yeah, sometimes there's like natural resistance. Like sometimes, and I'm like this, where I'll be like, I don't want to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And when I feel that way, though, what I will do is I will typically like try it. And then if it's like, okay, I was just being obstinate, like I should have just tried it, it's fine. Like you got to know like what things to fight and what things to not. So like in some of those situations, it's like, no, it's not worth it to resign. But I'd say when you're managing a larger team and it's impacting multiple people, and multiple people have been like, this is a problem, it's probably worth it to like take a look and redesign it. But if you're going to redesign any kind of system or process, you should have the people impacted by the system and process be included in the redesign.
Right.
You can't be like, I heard from you all this isn't working, so here's a new process. Like that is not, they're not going to be bought in. You also don't have the best information, so getting it from them is the way to do it. But yeah, I think like, yeah, it's like a case-by-case basis. Like sometimes worth it, sometimes it's not. You know, like it depends. It totally depends. But more often than not, it's good to redesign it with the people who are most impacted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. There's always, listen, I got my Lean Six Sigma green belt a long time ago. And so I subscribe to the like continuous improvement. There's always something to improve, big, small, little, all of that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Throughout your like whole career, you've had some like really big jobs, both in like leading crisis response in Google's CEO area, or like the whole Stitch Fix turnaround, and all that. What was sort of like similar and what was kind of different in both of those big jobs?
I think the big thing that was similar is like these were like big problems, and they're big problems that I always felt like you had one shot at. Mm-hmm. And you had to get really senior leaders on the same page. So like for Stitch Fix, I mean, that's trying to figure out how to get a whole business strategy like back on track of like a retail darling. Like what should we do? We launched some products, some were working, some weren't working. So it's like, what do we keep? What do we end? Like, how do we continue on that? Mm-hmm. And then we also had like new CEOs, like there was a lot of leadership change. And then like one example I'll give at Google, it's my proudest like professional and personal achievement. Mm-hmm. But I co-led all of our racial equity commitments after everything with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd in 2020 and the Black Lives Matter. So I was co-leading that whole thing. And that was like tons of people who were passionate about it and knew we needed to do something and trying to get everyone on the same page around like what we should do. And then it also felt like this is our one window of opportunity. We need to get this right. Yeah. And so for both of those, you know, you get all the inputs from all the people, and then you have to like make a decision. Like you have to say, we're going to commit to these things. And here's how we're going to know we're committed. Here's what we're going to execute against, and like be really prescriptive around like checking in, being like, is this working? Is this not working? Are you still bought in? Are you not bought in? What should I tweak? What should I change? It's like constant negotiation, but like, you have to either any of those situations, especially in crisis, you have to work with like conviction on like the information you have, while also balancing like if this new piece of information or something comes in, I have room to change. Mm-hmm. But like knowing why I would change and what would be that information. And so I think that's true across any of those things, is like understanding everyone's unique viewpoint, understanding the work they put in, the skill set they bring to the table, basically coalition building from there, and then saying like, okay, we're going to stand behind this direction, and like we're going to check in constantly to make sure we're doing what we need to do. And that is like not easy to do. And when you are the leader, because like sometimes I was making decisions, sometimes I'm serving up the decisions. Like those leaders are making the best decision they can with the information they have. And I think everyone thinks that once you're a leader, you just like know all the things. I think, you know, in certain situations you do know more because like you've seen it. And in other situations you don't. But like you've surrounded yourself with brilliant people who can help you make the best decision. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that is like the hallmark of a great leader. And I think that's, when I think about all those situations, I worked with like really great leaders who like allowed me to serve stuff up. I think I became a great leader in all of that. Right. And learned like those lessons, which I've like taken everywhere in my career. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I was kind of thinking of throughout all of this is like working in like stuff like crisis response, like especially like
Yeah.
serving those decisions up to CEOs, like
Yeah.
being in that seat where you have a lot of the information, you're doing a lot of the research on the problems. But like still you're not like often the final decision on that.
Yeah.
Like how has there ever been a situation, say, where like you present a solution that you think is like the right thing and the person above you goes to something completely different? And
Yeah, totally. 100%. And then I have to say, like, I mean, and I'm like looking up because there's like, so this also happens all the time to chief of staff, like all the time.
Sure.
So you have to know, like, okay, this person made this decision. There's probably some other piece of information they have that like I just don't know. And do I need to know it? Like, do I need to know it because it actually helps communicate the decision and get other people on board? Because usually, if you're serving up something to a senior leader, like 50 people have worked on it, have reviewed it a bunch of times. So it's like super demoralizing if they're like, I don't want that, I want this. And so you have to get from that leader, like, okay, I hear you. Can you just like tell me why?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And you might have actually been like, actually, we considered that. So if you still want to make a decision, that's fine. But like, just know, like, here are the risks like we're taking on. But getting the why out from them, if they can explain it, helps you then translate it to other people. And then a lot of times I'm like, you have to own this decision then. You got to communicate why you're changing it, why you picked this situation.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to think of good examples, but I feel like so many examples are like very high stakes that I can't even talk about.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah. And then honestly, in some of those situations, like the decisions can still work out because you can still tweak and change. Like nothing is really permanent, which drives employees crazy because they're like, we need like one dedicated path. And you're like, as long as like like going all the way back strategy, as long as the overarching thing you're trying to achieve is still the same, you can change some of the how along the way as long as you're super clear about why you're changing it.
Right.
And so like, yeah, I've had that scenario. It can be incredibly frustrating. And then other times I've been like, you know what, you made the right decision. And usually I will say like, you made the right decision. And other times it's the wrong decision. And it's like, what do we learn? And then when that situation comes up again, I can like point to like, are we sure we're not doing the same thing we just said we didn't want to do like 2 months ago? So yeah, happens a lot.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so what advice would you give to someone who is like about to go into a sort of high pressure job like that?
I mean, this is gonna sound wild, but I would just be like, it's not that serious. Everything is figure outable. Like nothing is permanent. Like I truly believe, like I really believe this. I really believe like you can figure things out. No decision is like forever. Like, and you are also like making the best decision you can with the information you have. I think so many times people will beat themselves up. Like, I wish I would have known better if I'd known this. And it's just like, there was actually no way you could have known that. So like beating yourself up about it is not helpful. And then 2, what can't happen is you also can't then in the next scenario get into analysis paralysis where you're not making any decisions.
Right.
So you do have that perspective around like, I mean, listen, I'm also like not doing surgery. So like you got to be decisive on that stuff. But I do think it's like everything is figure outable. Like you can change course, you can course correct. And it's like at the end of the day, like not that serious. Like you did everything you could. And as long as you can learn from those scenarios, you'll be fine. And then the second thing I would say to anyone going to a high stress job is like, you also have to have, particularly a chief of staff role, you have to have tons of discernment. So you have to actually know what is worth fighting for, what is not worth fighting for. Because you will have 1,000 micro decisions every day around that. You'll have like 10 big decisions a month, and you just got to know what is the right thing to really like put your foot down on or not.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I want to move now into women's sports, which
let's do it.
For your career, like looks like a really big pivot.
Yeah.
I know in our emails before this, you mentioned that one of the reasons that this sort of being on this podcast was interesting to you was because of your new connection to women's sports. Yeah. So why did pivoting to women's sports or like getting into that field in general feel important enough to you to like change your entire career for it?
Yes. I have always been a massive women's sports fan. Like I remember when the WNBA started. I remember how like the soccer league, there's been like 3 different leagues. They're finally growing. Like, and I had like played sports all my life, stopped playing because of injuries, whatever, and just knew I wanted to get in women's sports. And like finally women's sports like getting the attention it like deserves. And I was just like, I want to be part of being able to make sure like women's sports is like a mainstay. Like there's gonna be a world where like all these little kids won't even know that there used to not be women's sports, or like leagues would like come up and fold, etc. And so for me, I was like, I have to be a part of this. And I have always known my skills were transferable. And I had always been paying attention to like the business of women's sports, like, the investments that are happening, the valuations, the partnerships, like what it means. And so I have an executive coach, which she asked me to write down my dream job after I was thinking about pivoting out of being a founder. Cause like, spoiler, being a founder is really hard.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to build something, and I had written out this role of like, I want to be like building a new team, chief of staff, head of strategy, wrote it out. And then this job happened to come on LinkedIn like 3 days later.
No, that's great. Yeah.
And I was like, the number one way to show that I'm a fit for this job is to be proactive, to like connect strategy and like, yeah, reach out to people. So I just wrote like a 2-page memo about women's sports, myself, how I do this role, partnership bet, etc. And I just found the president on LinkedIn and like cold outreached with that memo.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if this is interesting, like I would love to talk. And like, that's how this started. So it was like taking like all my like experiences and then just the like, yeah, just like my own passion and being like, I'm willing to learn, we can do this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That is why. That is like the story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, do you see this like in your career, I guess, primarily as like a sports business or as something like more culturally significant?
I think it is culturally significant. I think it's like, yeah, women's sports just show like what's possible. And what really drew me to San Francisco Signal, which I know we'll get into, but the founder group that put this together have articulated and believe, and I believe this too, that like the next frontier of like gender equity and equality is like ownership. Mm-hmm. You have to build wealth, and like ownership is the other way. And so our ownership group is a predominantly like female. So it was like, this is a team who's just like not about like the women on the court, but then also like we have a lot of athletes who are owners, and like helping them build equity after they have already like given so much back to the game. And so, yeah, I think it's like culturally significant. I mean, I think it's like, Valkyries are like the first $1 billion valued franchise, which is they've only been around for 2 years. That's like insane. You're seeing all these people now wearing merch because they think merch like defines like, hey, I care about women's sports. I care about this local community. Even if they don't go match, like that's how they're identifying. So I think it's like hugely culturally significant. Sports is like still a business, but like it's also still like it's entertainment. And the biggest thing around why I wanted to also get into women's sports is like it's kind of like an AI proof job.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's all about like community in-person connection and like affinity with things. And like I worked a lot in the DEI space, and one of the things I used to talk about on stage was, particularly for like in majority groups, I'm like, if you want to understand what what it feels like being a minority, wear a visiting team jersey to a home like match or game. That immediate sense of like, oh my God, who looks like me? Where are they? Like that is what people who are underrepresented feel every day. So for me, sports also helps tell that story around like community and like affinity, and people from different backgrounds come around to like represent and cheer for one team.
Yeah, sure. That's great.
So that's why I think it's like a cultural movement, both women's sports in general, particularly with yes.
What did you have growing up as an athlete that young girls still don't have today?
What did I have? This is like a really good question, and I like should have prepared for this question. So what did I have that they don't have still today?
Right, like as an athlete, what did being an athlete give you that young women don't have today?
I think now there's like a ton of pressure actually in sports.
Right.
Like, you know this, you play sports.
Yeah, yeah.
When I was playing, it was like, it was a lot more, it was fun. It was a lot more like you grew up. Like some of my best friends today are still the girls I played soccer with when I was like 5, 6 years old.
Right.
Just saw one last week. She was out here in California visiting. And I think now with like competitive sports and club, like you're kind of like club hopping, like you're going from this club to this club. And then if you like if you don't make the team, then you don't get to see your friend. We we didn't really have that. Like it was competitive, but it wasn't like how it is now, where it's just so much pressure and like trying to make sure you're winning all the time, making the team. Like I do often wonder how much they get to bond like with each other and have like another team could have recruited me and I'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not leaving this team. Why would I get to play with my friends every single day?
Right.
And so that's probably like what my hypothesis is what kids that play sports today are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the freedom, the freedom to just play.
That's great. Yeah. So moving on to the SF signal. I know you mentioned when I first reached out to you that you were like just moving into the new executive role for the signal, and that you were like building out the entire front office.
Yeah.
What does building a front office mean, really?
Yeah. It means all the people who are going to help run the sports team. So, and what's awesome, I'm in the perfect situation because our president has been around sports for a super long time. She also came from the league, so understands the sport, the league, everything.
Right.
So she's like a sports expert. Two of my peers who oversee ticketing and partnerships also like both of them have, I think, close to 2 decades of experience of like sports, which I'm like, this is great because like I don't understand the sports business yet, but to my point, like I like to work with people who know, and I learn.
Right.
And so it was everything from like, one, who are the people that we're hiring? How are we onboarding them to make sure we have the shared language, shared mission, all that. And then when I first started, we didn't even have a team name. We had a color, we knew our color, but we didn't have a team name. And so being able to like work with the community, we did like a community vote for like what should the name be, and then Signal like was one that rose to the top, and being able to create a narrative and understand like we're a signal for like women's sports, we're a signal for volleyball in the Bay Area, like it just a signal for innovation, like the Bay is all like you're getting to build all of that, and then you get to go and like interview and hire the people who embody like what Signal is. And so that's like all the people, the branding stuff, and then it's like the operations. It's like, what are our meetings? How are we measuring success? Like walking around looking at venues. Like it is like all of the things. That is what building out my office has been. I also oversee merch, so like, what should our merch look like? What should we price it at? How do we sell it? Like all the things. So it's been like phenomenal. It's very much like building any other business. Mm-hmm. Minus the fact that it's like professional and it's sports, and then it won't start till like December. So yeah. Yes.
So what kind of like lessons and learning are you like taking from the prior places you've worked and like putting them into SF segment?
Probably one of the biggest lessons is for me, I think I'm pretty laid back, but I guess I'm not as laid back. So I think it's a little bit of like, hey, things move at like a different speed. So much of sports, you're partnering across like different industries. So you're talking to corporate partners, you're talking to like other people at the league, other people at other teams, the local community. So like they're not people who you're like working with every single day. So you can't just like, be like, let's just have this meeting. Like you gotta take this like back and forth. You gotta build a relationship. It's this longer back and forth. So I think that's one, is just like the pace of things is weirdly like slow and needs to be fast at the same time. So that's one big learning. Two, the sports world is super, super, super small. Everybody knows everybody. And because everyone knows everyone, you can like get to people really quickly. So like I got to meet my counterpart at the Washington Spirit. She's phenomenal. She leads marketing and strategy. And I happened to meet her the last week I was moving from DC.
Mm.
I have met the chief of staff to the Golden State Valkyries. I'm learning a lot from her. So it's like a very small world, but like
Right.
people are so open to learning because they all want like women's sports to be super successful and then also broader sports. Um, and then the other thing is just like there's not like the business of sports kind of has like three main revenue levers, which is like partnerships, ticketing, and media.
Hmm.
Like in this, I think so many people think merchandise is like a big, but merchandise is actually marketing. It's like awareness. And so like you have to be really thoughtful about what merchandise you put out because it needs to represent your brand. So those are like some of my more interesting learnings where I'm like, this is way different than like, a Google where I'm like
Right. Yeah.
doing all the things, and it's so global, but like we're having to build like awareness to like you are now going to be in the stadium like within 8 months time.
Yeah. And it's like local too, rather than like across the world.
100%. Yeah. You like want to have to start hyper local and then like spread out.
Right. Right. What in that sort of business of building Signal has been harder than you expected?
What has been harder than I expected? I think just like a lot of like I just didn't realize how much like teams and leagues have to work together. Like you see it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like as a sports fan, you're like, oh man, like I hope there's not a lockout, or like, oh man, like this team is about to get sold, like stuff like that. You like don't realize how much the teams like they're like big systems that work together. The league has to work with teams, the teams have to work with the players, and like they all have like the shared goal of like grow the sport, but then they all have like other different incentives underneath. And so having to like constantly negotiate that around like how do you grow all these things at the same time. Well, especially in a startup, like the league is like a startup league. We're a startup team. Like it's very interesting where it's like, how do we make sure we get the brand of volleyball, professional volleyball out there while also getting the brand of the team out there while also making sure people know the players. And so that's been a hard learning, which is like what goes first? How do I toggle in between? But luckily I've been able to have great partners across all three of those dimensions where I can be like chatting with them.
Sure.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest learning.
Sweet. Yeah. I had a little bit more on what like building a front office really means.
Yeah. Okay.
In building a front office, what sort of comes first? Like, do you start by like filling all the top jobs that you need, or do you start with sort of like laying down the foundation for like a culture, like the kind of organization that you want to become later?
I think it's the latter. So building the foundation, because that then informs like who you want to go and get. Right. So it actually goes back to like what we talked about earlier, which is like you can have an amazing person, but what if they're not values aligned with your so like I was very fortunate in that the founder group had set out kind of like who they want to be. And so it was kind of nice because like I get hired and I'm like I'm immediately like awesome, like this is super aligned. Like a lot of my interviewing conversations was about like the values and the culture they want to build, and I was like, yeah, I'm signed up to do that, and like here's how I would do that. And then getting to meet the other people we've hired, and then the people even to our interns who like we've hired, like being able to like anchor to that to help say like, hey, is this like something you're into? And half the time that's what has attracted people to want to work for us. Like a lot of our intern stuff is inbound, so it's people just pitching themselves and being like, I saw you, this is why I really want to work for you, I've seen the things you've talked about. So yeah, I think it goes to like setting your culture and your foundation first. And then it's like, okay, cool, what roles do we need to like operationalize? Great, now we can start the interview process around like who is going to work, like who's going to fit those positions like the best. Yeah.
I know in your like sort of mission, you guys sort of state that you want to be different from other sports organizations that already exist right now.
Yeah.
What do you not want to bring over?
I don't want to bring over like almost like where it's just like one owner,
Mm-hmm.
one owner who's like makes all the decisions. It's kind of detached from the community. Like we have an incredible ownership group, and one of the fun things about my job is I get to run like our monthly owner meeting. So I get to talk to our owners. Like I'm like I get to brainstorm with them. Like what merch we like to see, what kind of theme nights, like that. Like I want us to always continue. Like we have so much knowledge across sports, business, entertainment in our ownership group. I want to maintain like that like our owners are like active participants in building out this team. They aren't just like people who write checks and are like, all right, good luck, let me know. But like maintaining that. And I think that probably has happened because like in other sports, because it is like, you know, a couple big owners, either they're equity or billionaires or whatever, but like that's not how we're built. And so maintaining that inclusive culture is like the number one thing I want us to keep. And I want us to like continue to be super representative of the community, which we're doing. Like a lot of the stuff we're asking our community members, you know, even to like what days are the best days to have matches.
Right.
People advocate for that. Like that is what I love about the way we're building this and what I want to maintain.
Yeah. So how do you kind of like build that fan base? Because like with all these other like professional sports teams, at least the ones that like I personally know of, they've been around for like 100 years and they have like years and years of people being really into them. Like, how do you build that when people don't have an existing relationship with a San Francisco women's volleyball team?
Yeah. So you have to be out in the community a lot. So like you can kind of this. I think this goes for any product, but like for us, the way we're thinking about it, it's like, okay, there's an existing like women's fan, right? So how do we make sure they know who we are?
Right.
So like we have partnered with BFC, we partnered with the Valkyries, we partnered with Golden State Storm, like any team in the Bay Area we've partnered with. So when we did our announcement, every single Bay Area team, men's and women, announced like who we are.
Okay.
Even San Jose Sharks, even San Francisco 49ers, Giants, whatever, all of them. So I think one, you have to like get into the zeitgeist of just like sports in general.
Mm-hmm.
Two, volleyball, particularly in the Bay Area, has massive like pent up demand. I think there's like 300 or 400,000 people who play like rec volleyball in the area. Like it's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And that was part of the reason why like San Francisco made sense for an expansion franchise. And so you got to get out into those communities, connecting with those people. When we launched our brand, we sent every volleyball club a PR kit. So it's like about us, you know, sunglasses, all that stuff. So that's how like you, and then I think it's like, you start to feature your players, you start to get your message out about who you are. You pick partners and sponsors who are aligned with your mission, and that's how people start to hear about you and engage. And so that's what we've been doing since like, day one. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. For the sake of time, I want to get into sort of the one idea away part of this. And that's I mean, your entire career, you've worked across like so many different situations from like Google, from turnaround, Stitch Fix, you know, all that stuff. When you like look back at all of that, like your entire career altogether, is there kind of one idea about leadership or life or really anything that you keep coming back to?
Yeah, I think you should just like do the things like you want to do. Like do the things that like light you up. I semi-subscribe to transcendentalism.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the nature part. I like being outside, but the part where it's like the divine truth is like in your own intuitive nature, and then having like the courage to like pursue the things you want to do, despite people having other ideas of what they think you should do. That is probably like my biggest thing. And in all my steps in my career, like, could I have become a VP at Intel? Yeah, probably. Could I have stayed as a VP at Stitch Fix? Yeah, probably. But like, that's not what I wanted for myself.
Right.
And I live for the story. I live for like trying things, living for seeing like what I'm capable of. And yeah, I typically don't ask people's opinion around what I should do because I feel like I intuitively know what I should do and want to do. And that's what I've learned that lesson very early on, to be like, go after the thing I want to do.
Right. If someone could take that idea and like use it tomorrow, how would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to go to work, like take the day off. Like if you have been telling yourself, I really want to become a writer, and you just keep putting upon, like, sit down and write for 10 minutes. If you have moved to a new area and you're like, I really want to make sure I have a whole different set of friends, like, go find a random event. Like, I think it's that. I think it's like so many people like have this idea of the thing they want to do, and then something holds them back. And it's like, just like do it. Just do it. Like, sure, you were like, I want to start a podcast, and what do you have to do? You just had to do it.
Yeah.
Probably you could have asked 50 people, but like they could have been like, well, I don't know, or here's how. But you're like, it's just what I want to do. Just go and do it. So that's it. That's like, I feel like I sound like a marketer and ad, but like I think you should, just do the thing you want to do. So
yeah. Well, I think that's it, honestly. Thank you for coming on and taking this interview.